Hey everybody, it's Randy from Happy Maple Nursery, and I'm just here in the office today, and I was going through some old footage, just trying to see what I recorded and hadn't actually made into a video. And I came across some footage of us actually preparing Japanese maple hardwood cuttings, so really sought after in our nursery, something we really want to develop for our bonsai raw material production. And it seems that everyone really likes propagation type content, so I thought I would put this video out. But just before we get into that content and into those clips that I did record, I do want to preface this with some information. This was done about 2 years ago, so just basically talk about what I would do different if I were to redo this today. And so we made a really nice video, I think, where we succeeded in rooting a lot of our cuttings. Actually, I would say about 80 or 90% of our Japanese hardwood cuttings, and using a propagation box. So check that out. It's a really good one. Really simple, low tech, works great. And we go over some tips and tricks in that method itself to actually help you at home maybe achieve some success in propagating some hard to root tree varieties. But so what we would do different today relative to the video that's going to come up is we'd use a lighter medium. So that's about an 80% coarse perlite and about 20% composted peat or any organic matter you have. We found that this medium is really ideal for keeping the cuttings dry at the base where you've produced your superficial wound and where you're hoping to get callus and subsequent root formation. But it also has enough moisture and keeps the air moist enough through the sealed container at the early stages of the cutting before it's rooted to actually allow those leaves to have enough water content to not dry out. So that's what I do different. Everything else here, the handling of the cuttings, how we prepared them before we placed them in our propagation box, it'll all be the same. So I wanted to get this out to you to show you kind of how we handle them. And in the future, we'll probably put an entire video on this in more detail, just step by step on how we take from hardwood cuttings, the timing, all the way down to putting them in the box and showing how we actually end up rooting. But in the meantime, enjoy, watch how we prepare these cuttings, and there's some really good tidbits of information here. I think one of the things that's really missed with propagating is the failures. And so we've tried to highlight here between these two videos kind of where we've had success and where we've had failures. And I think that's a huge learning opportunity. So enjoy, let us know what you think in the comments, and please like and subscribe if you like this content, and we'll keep putting it out. All right, take care. So here we are. We're just going to stick our cuttings and we'll show you what we're going to do. Just to go over our list of tools and supplies. We've got our cuttings. Got a alcohol-based pen just to write up some labels that'll last the sun. Sharp knife. We're going to use this to actually damage the cambium and expose it a little bit to promote some wound healing and some callus, which will then hopefully produce roots. Got some rooting hormone here, and our trusty old chopstick in case we need it. We've got our trays of medium. All right, so first things first, there's a couple ways to add our rooting hormone. You can just take your cuttings and dip them into the powder itself. That'll work fine. What we're going to do here, though, and what I like to do is create a little paste. So I'm just going to scrape a bit of this out into an old container. It's just a protein powder container. Just take off some of that old protein, and we're just going to put some of this inside of the container. The advantage of this is that it doesn't contaminate your entire stock when you're mixing it up. So be careful, this stuff does contain talc, which you don't want to be breathing in or putting on yourself. So there it is. Hopefully you can see that, just the powder. We're going to add a little bit of water to that very gently. Let's put it to the side and out of the way, just to kind of make a paste out of that. So add some water to that, might be a bit much. Maybe we'll add a bit more rooting hormone powder to it. The idea is you just want to touch this onto the exposed cambium layer. This will expose it to the hormones that promote that callus that'll show up to actually grow at roots, which is what we need in order to turn these into clones of the mother plant. So mix that up. That's looking pretty good. We'll stick with that. All right, so I'm just going to get this medium wet too with a sprinkle of water, just to be sure we're not adding them into wet medium and we don't water them after to wash off the hormone. So we've watered our medium. And our medium in this case is a bit of compost, mostly pine bark, composted pine bark, a bit of akadama, lava rock, and some pumice. So just a free-flowing medium that won't hold too much moisture. The compost is peat-based, so it provides a bit of nutrients as well, thankfully, and that peat does hold a bit of water, which maples tend to like a little more water than, say, your coniferous species. So I'm going to grab a decent-sized cutting. So we're looking for cuttings that are about that size, and what we're going to do is just damage. The roots will actually come from this area here where the stem tissue is, and we're going to create a bit of a wound. Just take this out, just watch your fingers. This is a very sharp knife. Just do a little bit of a scratch around that area. That's pretty much it. Take this, dip it into our paste, and just stick it. And be sure that that's pressed down. And that's it. So we'll just continue on doing that with some of the best looking cuttings. We do have quite a few trays, so hopefully I can stick these all. And we'll just carry on. It's going to be quite a hot day today. It's already 26 degrees, and it's maybe about 9:30. So we're going to be misting these guys periodically to keep them wet. We don't want them to dry out. And then we'll dome them up and go from there. So let's give you another view of how we make these. So I'm just scratching off the buds down low. And this is a nodal cutting. You can see the nodes right there. The roots will be expected to come from here. But what we'll do, as I mentioned, is take our knife, just slide it along, exposing that green cambium underlayer. And that'll give us more area to actually, hopefully, between the internode and this cambial area to produce callus tissue, which will hopefully then give us some root tissue from there and allow these to be their own standalone plant. We'll just trim this up. It's a little excessively long. Might impede our dome from actually closing. That's it. Let's see if I can find a heel cutting. So here's a heel cutting. You can see we just tore this off the plant, and there's a little bit of tail that we cleaned up previously. Again, we're just going to rub the buds off. And so this area as well can also bud out. Heel cuttings, I think, have a little more chance of success. However, don't quote me on that. Either or is good in our books. We try them all. We'll stuff this down and also trim this guy up. It looks a little excessively long, although there's a nice bend there, but we're going to have to sacrifice it. So there's a couple things to keep in mind in order to get really successful cuttings. First one is the size of the cutting. You can see here we have decent size. We also go down something much smaller, all the way down to about a matchstick size. You can go with something a little thicker like this, and even something along the lines of that. But there are restrictions, and this is usually species dependent. With Japanese maples, I wouldn't want to get too much thicker than this. They just take a very long time to root out, which is not what we're going for here. It is tempting, and as Peter Chan calls it, don't be greedy. Some species will root from almost anything, but not these. So keep that in mind when you're selecting cuttings. The other thing to keep in mind is the time of year that you look to take these cuttings. There's 2 seasons generally, and what you want to target is, at least in our climate, which is zone 5B, you want to take these cuttings when the trees are coming into their most active stage of growth, or will be. So there's fall cuttings, which you take from a dormant tree. They sit all winter dormant and then come into active growth in the springtime, and that's when they put on their callus tissue and roots. The other time is springtime, which is what we did here. So the trees are dormant. We've taken these cuttings, so you can see that they haven't budded out yet, but they are starting to move. This is a really great time. These trees are about to go into active, really explosive growth, and hopefully that'll be perfect conditions to put on some roots and actually clone and become a standalone tree. So the last thing to consider is the age of the mother plant that you're taking the cuttings from. And so you want to select trees that are in vigorous growth typically. This tissue will be primed to also grow and put on roots really easily, as opposed to something that's quite old and not going through really rapid growth. It's said that this is the best time to select. I haven't tested that out, and I'm sure there are ways to encourage root growth on older trees. However, your strike chance, or your chance of actually getting roots and creating a clone, are said to be lower. So these are coming from 2-year-old Japanese maples that I've grown from seed. So these guys are great for striking cuttings from, and hopefully we'll get quite a few from here. Last thing I just want to talk about is how you can strike cuttings. So there's a couple ways you can do this media-driven way, where moisture in the air and the environment around the cutting actually provides keeps the cuttings alive and wet until they actually grow out roots. The other way is to just simply place these cuttings into water. This is a really low burden way to do it. A lot of plants will actually root out like this, like a lot of herbs. We'll actually do this. Tomatoes will also do this. It's a really easy way to make more plants. Woody stems like this tend to be a little more difficult and won't do that. However, there are always exceptions. Willows, for example, will root in just water very easily and very quickly. So somebody was asking about actually rooting these cuttings, thinking that we were doing them like this. We aren't going to do it this way, just because we don't have the time and the strike chance is relatively low. But we have found that you can strike them this way, and I'll show you an example after this of some cuttings we took in the fall that have actually grown out roots in the springtime when the cutting actually activated indoors. And so it is possible. So I encourage you to try it, but it likely is a lot higher chance of failure using that method. But, experiment, see what works for you, test it out. If you enjoyed that video, please like and subscribe, and we'll keep putting these out. Take care.